One of my best friends currently is in a position where the CEO of that company is hesitant to provide training and promotions to staff because they get it and then they leave for higher paying jobs. And he's struggling because he is excelling in the position that he's in, but the opportunities that he keeps, bringing forth and asking for these chances to grow and develop, he's been there, I think, 3 years now. So, I mean, it's there,
Yes.
but she is hesitant to provide that training for people out of fear that they'll leave, and it's like, you're only holding your own team and department back by doing that. Leading Ain't Easy, the show that cuts through the noise and gets real about leadership. I'm Ryan Calkins, Marine Corps veteran and founder of Reframe and Rise, and I'm here with my good friend and fellow leader, John Moore, as we unpack the highs, lows, and hard-earned lessons of what it actually takes to lead with character in today's world. It's not another highlight reel or fluffy leadership pep talk. We're talking about the stuff most people don't, the doubt, the pressure, the people problems, the pivots, and the personal growth that it demands. Because the truth is, leadership looks good on paper, but in real life, leading ain't easy. Welcome back to Leading Ain't Easy. Today, we wanted to focus on a topic when a high performer won't stop pushing for a promotion. And it was a subject that was suggested by a listener that we found to be pretty interesting. I know I've been on both sides of it where it felt like a carrot was being dangled and it was just this never ending changes trying to reach the next level. But I've also been on the other side in a managerial position where it's trying to temper expectations by somebody that was undoubtedly a high achiever, but was trying to promote too fast without learning the foundational aspects. So that's really what we want to focus on today.
Absolutely. And also the leader's role with navigating and directing them and not allowing them to direct themselves and almost to the point of demise in a sense, because they can overwork themselves, they could take on too much projects. Trying to be an overachiever can also lead to burnout, and we don't want that to happen as well. So we're going to also talk about that.
Yeah, and one thing that I was able to really coach somebody about was, I mean, she was phenomenal and knocked everything out of the park, and there were so many people that was like, "Oh, we should promote her, we should promote her." And I'm like, "Well, maybe we should, but maybe we shouldn't." Like, the last thing that you wanna do is promote somebody too fast and they get into a position that they're unprepared for, they're overwhelmed, they crash out, burn out, whatever, and then it has an adverse effect of what you wanted because, yeah, they do show promise, absolutely, but do they have all the foundational knowledge and everything else that they need to be successful at the next level? And that's part of the problem is everybody, yeah, I'm doing amazing at what I'm doing right now with these specific tasks, but how much have you done and how knowledgeable are you and the inner workings with everything else that you should have prior to moving up.
I agree. And then also, too, it's about, I think, mastering what you initially came in to do, and did you master that, and identifying uh that we tap into reviewing and reviews. Hey, have we mastered that before we go to the next level? And again, an employee feels like they need to be promoted, but I think from the manager's standpoint, we need to be able to evaluate them to see if they are in that potential of promotion, right? And not dangle it as a carrot, not use it as a motive or a motivator, but use it more of, this is what it's awarding you because you have mastered or accomplished the goals, right? And what we find in some cases, like you were explaining, the dangling of the carrot, you have some that are overachievers where they just take over their navigation of their career goals, of their own career goals, but not thinking about the business goals. We as the leaders need to make sure that you home them in and you guide them appropriately, because sometimes an employee can very well map their own chart and think that they have it and that they should go that way, but that might not be what the direction of the company wants them to do.
Right. I mean, people get stuck on the idea of a checklist, right? And they're accomplishing everything on their checklist. So they're like, well, I did all 10 things that were listed here, but that's only the measurable items, which doesn't account for the last episode that we did touched on soft skills. And part of it may be your interaction with your team and your ability to not necessarily delegate, but interact with people at all levels. And just having there's like intangible things that aren't necessarily measured or measurable that you can put on a checklist. And I think getting into the checklist piece is problematic. And it's what I fell victim to myself. It's like, I did everything that you've asked me to. What else do I need to do? And I think for some people, it's hard to say, I don't think you're ready personally, or maturity isn't where we need it, or whatever is the case. I think when it starts to become things beyond the clear measurables, it's more, manager intuition, or maybe it's just not a right fit and they don't know how to explain it. So how do you avoid operating on a checklist, which becomes problematic for both sides?
I think that I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit. I think that it's okay to have an internal checklist. I don't think that there should be one that the manager and the employee has, because the employee is going to hold you to that, just like you just alluded to. I mean, it's like,
Hmm.
I did this. Why don't I have that? Right. And so I think that it's important that you have an internal checklist of, like, when I do career pathing, here are the things that we need to do to get you to the next level. Okay. So that those are formal, because if you're saying, this is where you're trying to go, well, here are some of the things we need to do. But also, to your point, there has to be a form of flexibility that says, all right, this is not the only thing that it takes for you to move. It takes relationship building, trust. It takes, level of maturity. It talks to those other things as well, which are a part of that promotion. So let's say you're going from not leading a group of people to leading a group of people. Well, you have to be trained up to lead a group of people. You have to be trusted enough to lead a group of people, right? You have to be able to know you can develop good relationships with other persons. So all those things are key foundations to it. And we don't want to put those on the checklist to say, okay, did you build relationships with John? I mean,
Hmm.
that's crazy. It's about observation. It's about, the know how. It's about seeing a person mature on their own. So that's why, when we set somewhat of goals or accomplishments, or let's say career paths, we don't like to put time frames on it too much, because we really want it to be based upon accomplishments, growth, things that are not necessarily so structured than things that are structured. So you have to kind of have a balance between the 2. What do you think about that?
No, I think that that's accurate. I think that sometimes having ambitious employees that are high achievers are often harder to manage and supervise than ones that are underperforming, because you're trying to not only manage their expectations, but you're trying to control everything, and you have more than just them to consider, right? You have the entire team dynamics. Or, maybe you are doing everything that you need to do, but me promoting you right now is bad for the team because somebody else thinks that they deserve it, or whatever else, so you're balancing more than just that individual. If it was just a matter of, oh, John's not getting this out of the park, I could promote him, no big deal, unlimited resources and everything else, great, promote away. But there's a lot that you're trying to balance in terms of keeping this person satisfied while not upsetting somebody else. And I'm not saying that needs to be a determining factor where
Uh-huh.
you're always going to have somebody that's upset that they didn't get a promotion. That I don't mean that I'm not going to promote you because somebody else will be upset. It's just more, there's a lot more that goes into a decision to promote or something else than simply you're hitting the work. And maybe it's a matter of, yeah, this quarter you hit it, but I need to see consistency. You need to hit that same level for, who knows, 2 quarters, 3 quarters, four, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Um,
And define the reasons behind that. Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And it's just it's trying to temper their expectations, but also encourage the performance to continue, because you don't want them to get disgruntled and stop performing and silent quit or straight up quit, or whatever it is. But you don't want a high performer to stop performing because they're providing.
To it, right? It made me, as you were talking, it makes me think about when I had worked for this healthcare company, and I inherited a staff. And as I inherited the staff, there was also, this is a very good point, preconceived notions about who should be promoted to be the next lead or supervisor, right? And so a lot of those times that could be what someone else thought that they should be, but now you're looking at it like, I don't know if they are, leadership material. Well, in this particular case, this was a leadership material, which was good. And that this person did meet all of those areas that I was also looking for too. So it was an easy promotion, right? But also the part of the employee was she knew I was new, that she had to get the buy-in from me, that even though she has gotten it from everybody else, now here's a new manager, and she felt like she had to restart all over again. And it did take some time. And the things that I mentioned earlier, trust. I had to make sure I could trust her, because if you're going to be under me, I need to feel like I can trust you. You're
Yeah.
going to be loyal. I needed to get that sense of it. And I think it was almost a year, before I moved her into that role. Maybe a year, a little bit less than a year. But the goal was is that I didn't just want to do it because I inherited her and that statement was inherited. I wanted to make sure that this was going to be a good fit, right? And it also talks to the intent, not only, validating it from my standpoint, but also validating it from her standpoint, right?
Hmm.
And it was interesting because she was able to understand my pushback, because I wasn't immediately saying, okay, yeah, I'm ready to do it. I said, give me time. And I've done that continuously. Another organization you and I worked with, I did the same thing. I didn't immediately just bring somebody up. I took time. I wanted to get to know the person. And that's something that has to be really spoke upon and communicated with that employee, because just because they think that someone else promised them something and now there's new leadership that is supposed to
Yeah.
automatically happen, you need to, and it's the worst situation, because it could go good or it can go bad, because the other person may not like you for various of reasons, right? And you may not like them as the employee for various of reasons, right? So it's a hard position to put people in, but it's one in which does happen, and we have to be open and adapted to it. I do want to pose this question. Do we find it more that this topic, which I really enjoy, is more difficult now in this generation than it would have been in our generations or our parents' generations before us? What do you think?
I think it's probably harder now because the loyalty to the company and to
Longevity.
everything else historically, it's like, yeah, you probably dealt with disappointment, but job hopping wasn't. I don't want to say it wasn't socially acceptable. It just wasn't as common as it is now, and I feel
But
like now it's
be
like,
real, it wasn't socially accepted. Be real, it wasn't. Back in our day, job hopping, going from place to place, they always inquired, "Why did you go to so many different jobs? Why did
yeah.
you remember in the interviews, I see a lot of movement." So, yeah, it wasn't acceptable, where now, 3, 5 years, you're out. Go ahead, please, I'm sorry, I just had
Well,
you.
no, I just I think about it like in terms of sports and other things where, a player thinks that they deserve playing time, they deserve this, they deserve that, and you have a coach. It's like, well, you could, but your attitude sucks. This sucks, and you would get benched and come back stronger, hopefully, or you would wash out. And now it's like to stay in the coaching and sports analogy, it's with free reign and free agency in college. It's like you bench a player, he leaves and goes to a different school.
Mhm,
And it's the same thing with jobs. It's like you want to help people develop and push them to be better, but if they get disgruntled, they don't stay and work through the challenge and develop. They hop ship and find another avenue. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. They likely they'll leave, get a raise somewhere else, but the core issues that were holding them back at this role usually hold them back at the next role, and then they jump to the next job and they might get a little raise, but they're still having the same issues and problems. And I think that piece of it can be problematic because the growth and maturity in professional development often gets lost in the shuffle of moving from job to job. So, and your mention of it was promised by a prior manager, maybe it was, or maybe it was that person's perception of a promise.
Mhm.
But I've also seen it to where managers will make or allude to it being a certainty when they never really had the intention of doing it because they want to keep that person productive. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, continuing to dangle that carrot to get just enough out of a person to keep them engaged and striving for it, even though they never intended at all to put that person in the next position.
Yeah, and it's funny you bring that up because I don't I felt a little bit of that, but then when I came into that company, they said, "We did promise her that." And it was almost as if we want you to continue to go in that direction, but it's your final decision, as to what.
Hmm.
So I use that for that purpose. I use it to evaluate and to make sure that, that was a good match for us. And luckily it became. I want to go back to your other statement, which was quite interesting too, about the leaving or the sports analogy, that you get benched. And I thought, because I'm not a sports kid, but I thought that the benching was a form of teaching, training, teaching moments, team moments for you to sit, rest, observe, become more in tune so that therefore you most likely would get back in and you play the game, you be the team player and all those wonderful things. Well, nowadays it's like, F you, I'm not going to be benched. It's like, I'm going to go to another team or I'm going to find another job. But what I think happens also in those instances, they lose the opportunity. There's an opportunity in being benched. I don't know sports, but I do know this from what I've observed is that you are you are building something, you are seeing something, you are observing something, you're learning something while you're being benched. It's not that you're just being benched to be benched. It is for a process. There's a learning that's to be done. And the same for why we're not promoting you immediately because you're not ready, right? You still need to learn team building. You still need to learn leadership skills. You still need to learn being on time. You still
Yeah.
need to learn, you know what I'm saying? And I think that that's where, unfortunately, this generation loses that because we want instant gratification. We want now. And that comes from a whole nother topic, which is from where parenting never gives the boundaries of saying no, right? And the no component really puts a place in mind of no means no, or no means not now, or no means maybe later on, right? Where for
Hmm.
them, it's like if I'm saying no, it feels like I'm not going to ever get it. So I'm going to make it happen. And then to your other point, you say it may or may not work out and sometimes it does, and then sometimes it doesn't. I think the benching analogy really creates character in a teammate and also in an employee because it allows for them to sit back, learn, watch, observe, and become better. What do you think?
It does, and I think the biggest growth opportunities for people are in times of adversity and struggle, and overcoming those challenges. And when you bounce and escape to something else to continue doing what you're doing rather than heading that adversity straight on, it's like that opportunity for growth eludes you. And one of the main problems is people, like you said, or at least alluded to, was that people want certainty. And as a leader, you just and a
Sure.
manager, you can't guarantee anything, right? You have to be as transparent as possible, but also respectful. And I think that's part of the problem that I talked about before is you have the easily measurable, you must hit this dollar amount, this amount of project hours,
Mhm,
whatever it is, you can put those on paper.
mhm,
But if I tell you, I need you to improve your EQ and your relationship building and how your executive presence, whatever it is that is there, it's like those things aren't necessarily measurable, at least to put on paper for you to say, "Oh, yes, I achieved it." Because it's really on the person that is viewing you and your behavior and your interactions for them to say, "Yeah, I think John has
it's hit
been,
that mark. Yeah,
consistent in this area to
mhm,
where I'm now comfortable."
absolutely. Um, I think that's such a valid point, and it also makes me think of another point too. It goes back to what I alluded to a little briefly about intent. It's about figuring out why does a person really want to be promoted, right? Is it really about, wanting to be in leadership or wanting the next level in their career? Is it really more internal or is it more in the tangible? Is it more the financial? Oh, I just want the money. So, do you want the money, but then you don't want to be invested as to what the job wants or what the job needs, right? There's something there that we have to make sure that there's a true balance in it, because a lot of people are driven by the financial aspect of promotions, right? Not just the expansion of responsibility, expansion of leadership, or whatever other, credits that come along with it. I think sometimes people get more vested in the money. And don't get me wrong, yes, we know we have to, pay bills and all that good stuff, but we should not allow that to be our frontal lobe lead. It should be more of, I want to enhance myself, I want to grow, I want to expand myself, expand my knowledge, right? And if the money, of course, is another component, yes, of course, great. But I really want the other component too. And we just find that sometimes salary growths are more important than it is of the intellectual growth or the responsibility growth as well. Have you seen that in your experiences?
No, I have, and it I mean, obviously, there's different motivators for everybody, right? Some people want more pay, some people want the title, some people think that they can make a difference there. Some of it is ego or competition with peers, and they're saying, "Oh, I do my work so much better and faster than John does, like, I should be his manager," or whatever it is, but going back to the maturity piece, it's how do you balance the fast growth that somebody, wants or believes that they deserve based on their technical, uh, prowess versus what makes a sustainable leader and somebody that is ready to promote. I think the challenge sometimes is that people get lost in we talked about this before where sometimes like when I worked with a lot of engineers in project management, they are very, very efficient and well at the technical piece of what they're doing, right? And I'm not saying this is all engineers, but I think it's symbolic of
An engineer. Mhm.
well, engineers, but also people that are very proficient in what they do, right? And you come into a role, you knock it out of the park. It may be easy. Maybe the role itself was too easy for you.
Mhm.
You come in as an analyst or whatever. But if you're missing the leadership component of it, that takes time to develop. And we talked about where you don't want to rush somebody into the next level. How do you I mean, I guess you set forth a anticipated timeline, right? In a
Yes.
year, we'll revisit it. I need you to hit these things. In the meantime, I think in some conversations that I've had, even in my own career, what doesn't happen is that, there may be I need you to continue to hit these numbers for the next year.
Mhm.
But it's not like or it'll be referencing, "Oh, I want you to improve your executive presence," or, "I want you to develop leadership skills." But there's no like, "These are the leadership skills I'm looking for. This is the type of stuff I'm looking for." And there's no like development plan that hits these things on top of the measurables that you're really accountable to. So, if they want you to get better at public speaking and engagement, it's like, oh, well, I suggest taking Toastmasters or let me know how that goes or take this course and really starting to expand what the training opportunities and development opportunities look like for staff to put them in the best position to succeed and hit the things that you want to. Yes, sometimes those occur and
Mhm.
people knock all of that training out on top of the measurables
Mhm.
and they still feel like they're getting railroaded because at the time maybe the position doesn't exist or it's not available even if you're ready. So
Mhm.
like there are other factors that keep people from an immediate promotion.
Absolutely.
Or sometimes, you have the instances where the position before you is vacant
Mhm.
and you are taking on additional duties that are also a lot of the duties of the person ahead of you, and then you get passed up for it and people feel slighted. And there's a
Absolutely.
lot that goes into that as well, and you can't forget the political element that
Oh,
also can hinder you.
absolutely. It's funny, as you're talking, I'm just thinking of so many different scenarios with clients I currently have, friends that have gone through this. But one thing one of many things you said, but this one stood out too, is the no guarantee component. There's so many things that can happen that are outside of our control as leaders. We can have mergers. We can have layoffs. We could have budget cuts. We could have someone to come in and do a consultant on a Six Sigma, and they have lean processes come in to where we're alleviating this role, and now we're gonna lean and bring everything real tight. I mean, multiple things could happen that we're preparing a person for something, and then it could change just like that. And I think that that honesty has to be translated too as well. Of course, we're not trying to see that to happen, but those are unforeseen things that can happen. That's one thing that you made me think of. Another thing you made me think about was the sense of somebody like being ready and being efficient for the job. And for me, I was thinking about what I've seen in my 30 plus years of being in corporate in some shape or form, of how I've seen them say, 2 years is our mark, because 2 years was really was really a kind of a good model to use to get everything that you needed to accomplish, right? That you got the training, that you got the building, you have the relationship building, the trust, the honesty. Because within a 6 month time, I really can't get that. Within a year's time, I'm just feeling comfortable, right? So if I'm at least giving myself a year, year and a half, 2 years, I should be pretty solid to move myself up. And that has been a model that I've even used myself, depending on, the demand of the business, because that's another thing that also can accelerate or not accelerate the movement is the movement of the business. It's multiple factors that can say, this is why we can elevate. This is why we cannot. This is the model that we use. This is the model that we don't use. I mean, there's multiple things there. And I just think the transparency, back to your statement, should be there. If we don't have transparency telling them what to look forward to, then we're going to be in a bad situation, because they're going to have their hopes driven, thinking they're going to get it. This is going to happen based upon these criterias, and then it doesn't happen. And it'll be feeling like how you felt, or maybe how many others feel as well, when promised these roles. And then one more point I wanted to say, thank you for bringing back to my memory, is generationally, when we're in this new culture, is the quick turnover. So that's another reason why we don't want to promote quickly, because we don't know how long you're going to stay.
Yeah.
We invest so much in you, and then there's another shiny object and you're gone.
Right.
So there's another reason that we don't immediately want to just move someone up, is because not necessarily generational, but cultural, all those factors we'll see and say, okay, I don't think you're ready, because you look like you're 1 foot in, you're 1 foot out.
No, one of my best friends currently is in a position where the CEO of that company is hesitant to provide training and promotions to staff because they get it and then they leave for higher paying jobs. But it's like it's a government entity, but there's like a private component to it. I don't know exactly what the structure is, but obviously, private pays more than public, right? So people are getting skills, getting this, getting that, and then they leave for a higher paying private role. And he's struggling because he is excelling in the position that he's in, but the opportunities that he keeps, bringing forth and asking for these chances to grow and develop. He's been there, I think, 3 years now. So, I mean, it's there,
Yes.
but she is hesitant to provide that training for people out of fear that they'll leave. And it's like,
And that's not
dude, you're
cool.
only holding your own team and department back by doing that.
But either way it goes, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring that up. I won't mention the name of the company, but in here in California, the same thing happened, because it wasn't it was the training. Specifically, they were teaching a certified course. I can say this part of it, which is Epic. And they were training everybody on Epic. And what was happening was they weren't paying them the best, so they would learn Epic and they would leave. They would learn and they would leave. So then what happened was, this company says, you have to be here for a certain amount of time. And if you're not, yeah, I think they signed a contract. Forgive me if I'm not saying correctly, but they had to sign something. If they were not going to be there for a certain period of time, they had to pay back the investment of
Hmm.
the schooling or education that they had given them in Epic, because Epic is a big deal. It's a big Uh, resume builder is a big job opportunity. If you know how to do it, you can make good money. And so they were finding that people were learning and they were out. They were learning and they were out. So yeah, but that's not fair. If you're going to offer something, you're going to offer something. But if you're going to offer something, offer it to the point that it is the same that's what's happening in the industry. So you don't lose people, right? So you don't lose them. You keep them. You know that you keep them motivated because you don't want to give somebody something and then they leave. You have to start looking internally as to why would they leave? What's happening in the business?
Yeah. And I was thinking how before you had mentioned that I had mentioned the consistency piece and the transparency and how important that is, and I started thinking about an interaction that I had had before, at least a learning experience I had, where in trying to be transparent and open, I was providing too much information in terms of kind
Mm,
of detail and over explanation to where it was starting to hinge more on pushback in the form of negotiation and debate, and it's like, well, we're not here for debate, and I guess I had to find the right balance between being too ambiguous to where they didn't understand what was going on, and not being so detailed in why that it started to become a back and forth. It's like, well, this is what I need to see, this is how we need to see it. It's not a debate. Like, I'm telling you what needs to happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to go back to one of the things you brought up earlier and that I kind of glazed over because it was important, which is the checklist. The checklist between the leadership and as well as the employee. We have this checklist about, is it about speed, or is it about the depth of the employee? Is it the
Mhm.
speed in the employee? Or is it the depth of the employee? Does the employee have the knowledge? Is it about control or is it about trust? When we look at those factors, is it about career growth? Again, it mentions the intent. Is it about leadership tapping into additional knowledge or leadership traps? We got to figure out these different things because we find that sometimes when we have a list, if we will, quote unquote, who's really keeping track of the list? Where does the list really have its importance? Who's identifying the balance between the list? Who's being more realistic? Who's coming back at the list and saying, "Okay, you met these markers, but you still and," right? It's that funny kind of unstructured way. But I don't care what anyone says, there's still a structure that needs to be there to give an employee an understanding as what's needed to grow. But at the same time, it's not so firm that we can't say, don't forget about relationship building. Don't forget about honesty and trust. Don't forget about, don't be so boastful and so prideful that you can't take feedback and things like that because all of that is within the growth stage, and it also shows that you will be a good leader because if you can take feedback, that means you can give feedback. So a lot of growth in that, let's say, checklist component too, it's also there too. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, sticking with the checklist thing, like, you have to have a checklist of sorts, right?
Yes, yes,
Because you need to know what people are being measured by.
yes.
And I guess we keep talking about measurables, and maybe the way to look at it is not having a checklist tied to tasks where people can say, "Yep, I've done that."
Okay,
It's
yep,
more
I agree.
capabilities and what people are are capable of.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but really that's what it's looking at. And when it comes to capabilities, it's harder to measure, right? But you have to the person has to be comfortable in the fact that you are capable of doing all of these things. And yes, it's on you to prove to them that you fill all of these needs and you're capable of doing them. But again, I mean, there's some situations where it's just not going to matter what you do. Like, maybe you work for me and I just don't like you or I don't trust you. You're a solid member of my team and you produce, but I don't trust you to step into the next level and serve in that capacity. So, am I honest with you and say, John, I don't trust you. You're never going to be a supervisor under me? Or do I continue to say, yeah, we'll reassess again in 6 months and see where you're at. Just keep plugging.
Well, see, and I think Hmm. And that's what's so sad about where we are sometimes is that you can't be honest because that kind of honesty would put us into the HR realm of saying, I don't trust you. So that's why you can't move forward. Right. But then it's an honest statement. To be honest with you, if you have observed an employee that has gotten into so many different scenarios, so much drama within the work environment, but they're excellent at their work and their workload, but their social skills, interactive skills, their team skills are sucks out loud, but they want to elevate. Well, this is still a hindrance. So there's a way in which you identify that uh, it's sad that sometimes you just can't be honest like we need to be because sometimes I think that honesty really does help a person to really mold or grow because when someone says I can't trust you, you should immediately say, well, what did I do? And then you should be able to say, well, here are the things in which I've observed that makes me feel untrusting of you. Right. And then, until I can feel more a form of trust and form of ability to let you just go and run, I feel like these things need to be met. Now, I remember, as I was saying that, I do remember hearing leadership say things to that magnitude, but just being able to say, "I don't trust you." Yeah, it was kinda I would love to say that, "I don't trust you. I've seen you. I've seen you, without people, watching you for a specific role, and I've heard what you said, and yeah, I get worried. I don't think that you would be a good leader over a group of people." And it's kind of a bad thing in a sense where you can't be honest, but on the other hand, I know that's why HR is there, so that we have our guardrails and we have our balance, and I appreciate that. But I also think we miss the goal sometimes in not just being honest with employees, within framework, of course, to let them know what's really real.
Yeah, and I mean, and we talked about it before, but you can only control what you can control, right? So as an employee, you can control how you show up, the things that you do, everything that you bring to the table. You know how you operate as an employee. What you can't control is what other people do with that. You can't force somebody to promote you, right? But as a leader, you also can control the promotions and the other things that you do, and you can't control how somebody will respond to the information that you give them or the decisions that you make. And you have to operate within those decisions, and you handle the outcome as it happens. Like you can try to mitigate it with anticipating the likely scenario and outcome of a decision that you make, but you're still managing to what that outcome is.
It brings up one more thing before we close. I was thinking about this as you were talking, and I'm asking the question because I kind of feel like I know my response to it.
Mhm.
But how do you deal with a scenario where there's a personal component to it, right? That you really don't want to promote this person because professionally as well as personally, you don't care for them. And that's real. We're human beings. We gotta be real about this. You've observed them, you've seen them for a number of period of time. They're really not able to meet the course of what we think that they're supposed to be met at, or what we have developed our company or our teams at, and then we're gonna just release them to a person that we really don't trust, we don't believe in, we really don't think they can do the job, but in their mind they can. Are we holding them back for our own personal scenarios, or are we holding them back because they really can't do the job?
It could be a little bit of both. I think as an employee, I was in a situation where I was in upper management and there was a CEO of a company that I worked for, and we kind of butted heads a little bit in terms of what we thought on certain things. And I had a conversation with him. We're talking about trust. I let him know that I didn't trust him and why. And I thought that honesty would help in building a relationship, and it felt like it did for about 2.5 years. And then in an annual review, we were talking about potential ownership and stuff, and he's like, "Well, why would I want a partner that doesn't trust me?" And I'm like thinking, "That was a conversation we had 2.5 years ago. You think I haven't developed trust for you over 2.5 years when we've been actively working together, and I've been continuing to promote within this company. And it just I was like, you've been sitting on, like, thinking to myself, like, you've been sitting on that and harboring resentment for 2.5 years, and you wait to talk about it then. And I was just like, man, that's when honesty really backfired. But for me as a leader, having to manage people that I didn't like, we had an episode on managing people that you don't like. But what I've always tried to do is focus on the aspects of them that I don't like. Like, if it's usually it for me, it most of the time when I don't like somebody, it's observing how they are with other people and how they will step on others to try to get ahead, or they're just rude and only they're just self-centered people. So I always try to build in a leadership development component that focuses on that skill building and empathy and just being respectful, not in a way that says, "Oh, I don't know how to describe it, but not like trying to do it in a way that doesn't attack their character,
Mhm.
but helps them focus on the development skills that I need them to have." Because if I just sit there and I'm like, "Well, I don't like John, I'm never gonna help him get better," I'm setting us both up for failure, because I have you who is never going to get to where I need you to be, but you're also gonna continue to be disgruntled because you're not getting what you want, right? Which is a potential promotion. So what I've always tried to do is, whether or not I like the person, try to help them focus on the developing the skills that I need, that is really the basis for my dislike for them, or the thing that they're doing.
And for me, I definitely promoted the person that I did not care for, and it did still backfire. And if I would have followed my first frame of mind, I would have never had to go through the experience that I went through. So it's like a catch 22. Do you want to go personally and feel that way about, the movement and the growth? Or do you want to just let it happen and you deal with what it happens? It's the most hardest situation to be upon or to be in, because you don't you want to be fair. You remember me saying that. That's
Mhm.
my whole thing about everything is I always want to be fair. I want to be fair. But at the same time, I did not want to promote that person. And it wasn't just personally, it was just kind of like they were not ready for that.
Was this the person that you came in and they were
Oh, no,
promised?
totally different.
Oh, different. Okay.
Totally different. Oh no, that one, she turned out to be a star. Matter of fact, she has my role today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Today.
Outperforming what you did, or
I'll cut you. You better cut it out. So
no? So
yeah.
what was it that, I mean, if you're comfortable talking about it, what was it that kind of gave you hesitation that you ultimately decided to ignore and promote anyway?
Well, one, it was kind of the scenario of we were breaking teams up into two separate teams, so we needed to have leads, right? And so he was grandfathered in, he was already there for so long, and also he was underpaid. Me being fair, he needed to be brought up because he had had this role for so long and not making any money. So here I go with the soft card thinking, why is he not making any money? He needs to be put up. Then, hearing all these other attributes, but then my spirit was just saying, and I'm pretty have good discernment, was like, and I still did it anyway and still got my ass. Still did it. And here were all the factors that I was thinking about them, thinking about them, thinking about them, but they showed me they could care less about me. Right. And so somebody says, well, it's not about you, but it is, because if I made their promotion about them, why can't I also identify how I would be beneficial about promoting someone, whether they be an asset or whatever it may be. Right. So it was disheartening. But those are sometimes the stories that we have. We have good and we have bad stories about making those decisions that we wish that we didn't. We have some that we glad that we did, and we have some that we wish that we didn't.
So when you're talking about making it about you, are you looking at it in a lens of, like, as a legacy of, like, people that you promote that would not necessarily carry on as a John disciple or something like that, but more it's like the success of people that you promote obviously is beneficial for you in the sense that, yes, I helped them get ahead and look how much they've grown and developed. Is that kind of What you mean, like, when you made it about you?
Absolutely, and then the way that I was mentored in corporate was that you wouldn't hire someone that would not, uh, I don't wanna say be in the image of you, but be of the same character of you, be in the same, directive of you, someone you could be proud of, someone you're not
Mm.
feel ashamed of that you promoted or took them to the next level. So there's that personal because in your boss when in this and funny enough, in this situation, my boss was like, "Well, you hired him. I told you you didn't have to hire him. You didn't have to," literally said that to me. You did not have to promote him, but I gave him all the reasonings, which I just gave you. Well, he's underpaid. He's been here for so long. I would literally put myself on for him and still came back and it bit me in the ass. So, it's one of those situations. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that kinda brings us to, like, a hard truth that not everything works out, and even if everything works out, like, you have high performers that are going to leave anyway, you know, and I think it's just part of leadership, like, I don't know, the way I've always tried to view it is regardless of the company I'm at, I always try to help people grow and develop, and if they leave and they're successful, that's
Right.
still representative of me and helping to push them along. So I guess I do understand the pride factor in helping somebody else grow because you see how much they can develop and the things that they can do. And just knowing that you were able to be a part of that and help them is great, whether they stay with you or they go and blossom somewhere else. But I guess that's part of it as a leader is knowing that it's not failure if somebody leaves because they are still being successful and you still contributed to that growth. And it could just be a matter of maybe they outgrew the company or the role or whatever it is, and it was time to move on. And not everybody is a perfect fit and a career man,
Mhm.
as they say.
But he was a butthole. Just it.
Well, not your person. He
Okay,
totally
okay.
could have been a butthole,
Yeah,
but
mine was a butthole. Love it, love it.
I guess for anybody that's out there listening, are you over explaining anything to people that are struggling with not being promoted, and are you over explaining in a way to avoid discomfort and challenging conversations, or providing some truth bombs that may hurt?
Mhm. And if so, understand that there is that, and that sometimes we have to be honest, and then sometimes we can't be as honest as we like to. There is a hindrance in that, but the thing of it is that we know that being leaders is one of the most hardest things to do, and it's not for everybody. Everybody is not a leader, and that's okay as well.
Yeah, and then I guess for employees that aren't necessarily managers and leaders, I think are you trying to earn the promotion, or are you trying to control it, as John
Mm,
alluded to earlier?
good point. Good point. Very good point. Very good point.
But I guess we can close on that
On
note,
that, that's a good
and
point. Yes,
until next week, leading ain't easy.
but you don't have to do it alone. See ya.
Thanks for tuning in to Leading Ain't Easy. If something in today's episode resonated, please do us a favor and share it with someone else who leads or aspires to lead. Because honestly, none of us have this figured out, but we can all get better together. If you're a leader or professional feeling quietly stuck in your career, visit reframerise.com. It's a career and leadership coaching firm where I work with veterans and other high achievers to realign their work and lead with purpose. Again, that's reframerise.com. And if you're looking for leadership tools, training, or support for your transportation department, check out Bus Pro Network, where Ernie helps school transportation leaders across California build safer, stronger teams. Please subscribe wherever you listen, leave a review, and let us know what topics you'd like us to tackle in the future. And remember, leading ain't easy, but you don't have to do it alone.